Hi, everybody, and welcome to the weekly wrap for September 25th, 2020. My name's Marianne Simpson from Apex Media.
And I'm Seth Miller from PaxX.Aero, and we're running a little bit of an experiment in this week's episode. Can you recognize me with my mask on? Obviously, in this scenario, the answer is yes, but for a lot of the biometrics systems out there that are involved in facial recognition, these masks prove to be a terrible challenge. They basically block the technology from working, and a number of companies are now trying to address that problem, coming up with solutions that might actually work, even with passengers wearing masks.
Yeah, that's right, Seth. So this week on Apex.Aero, we published a really cool article, which was written by one of our contributors, Paul Sillers, talking about the challenges posed by face masks to biometric systems in travel, and looking at some of the solutions that some of the vendors in the industry have devised, or the way that they are adjusting their algorithms to be able to recognize people even with the mask on.
Yeah, and so earlier this year, the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technologies, NIST, ran some testing with the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Patrol, and they used some of their sort of standard algorithms that have been in place for these technologies and found out that the match rate was somewhere between 50 and 90%. Not great, especially considering that without the masks on, the technology is definitely in the 95 to 99% rate against what they're typically using. And they're basically now talking to all these companies, as you mentioned, trying to come up with algorithms that will work with the masks on, and they're having to do a lot of development to revise the tech.
That's right. So one of the vendors who seems to have made quite a bit of progress in this department is Thales. They're a well-known provider of not only in-flight entertainment systems, but also biometric solutions for the entire travel journey. We spoke to Thales, and they said that they've been able to retrain their algorithms to detect whether somebody is wearing or not wearing a mask with a success rate above 96%. And then going beyond that, they say that they've seen accuracy rates of 99%, being able to match, just the eyes and above, basically, of a traveler to their travel document. So they need to do some additional training with people wearing masks to make sure that they've got it right, but they're very confident that they'll be able to do this and roll it out.
Yeah, Edge Neural is another one based in India, and their Face Edge algorithm, very similar. They are working on, again, just measuring sort of this section of your face and being able to adjust it, and they're already deploying at 95+% accuracy. So masks are here for the foreseeable future, it would seem, and there's a lot of money being invested in making that work with all of the biometric systems.
Absolutely. That's so great. I know I just got the new iPhone 11, which uses face recognition technology, and I have to keep pulling my mask down to use it. And it is frustrating, especially when you're in a time-sensitive situation. You want to get through or pay for something or do something quickly. So looking forward to seeing the outcome of these trials.
Yeah, me too. Another interesting development, a little bit more light on the scale this week, United Airlines introduced a new way to search for flights. So rather than you having to know exactly where you want to go and when, they've added a flexible search option that lets you pick from a variety of sort of types of destinations. You can say culture or beach or city, or some of the new ones that they've added to the filter list, national parks, and then give it flexible dates and a budget. And the system will actually come back and give you a range of options available.
I think this is amazing. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to, even just in my friend circle, who just want to go somewhere, anywhere. They want to go to a place where they maybe don't have to quarantine, or a place where they're going to be able to go outside and see something in the fresh air that's not too crowded. So I think a service like this is going to be welcome for the leisure travel segment.
Yeah, absolutely. The quarantine one's a big sticking point still, and they haven't quite figured that part out and integrated it. If they could, that would be huge. But as you noted, leisure travel is where it's at right now, and this is definitely focused on that segment. So it'll be fun to watch this evolve with United.
Cool. Well done, United. I like that. Okay, moving along, I'm actually really excited to introduce our guest on the show this week. His name is Michael Gill. He's the executive director of the Air Transport Action Group, which is a member-based industry coalition that advocates on behalf of the industry and a cross-section of the industry on a number of topics. And one of their big focuses is sustainable aviation, working across the industry, government sectors, airports, air traffic, airlines, vendors, you name it, to try and make sure that we are growing in a sustainable way. As you can imagine, sustainability has sort of dropped, not off the radar, but down on the radar behind health and safety lately. But they've got a event coming up next week, and ahead of that event, we thought it'd be great to have Michael on to talk about where we sort of are at with sustainability in aviation as we look to restart. So without further ado, I'd like to say hi to Michael. Thanks for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit about your role and your mission as Director of Aviation Environment at IATA?
Thanks very much for having me. Delighted to be able to join the group. So the Air Transport Action Group is a cross-industry coalition of organizations and companies all across the aviation sector. We bring together airlines, airports, manufacturers, and air traffic management organizations working around industry advocacy and communications on some vital topics of sustainability and sustainable development. So ATAG has a real force because it brings together a complete cross-section of actors in our industry with a common view and a common position and a common goal of what our future sustainable development should look like. ATAG's existed for 30 years. We have membership from all across the globe, supported by a very small but very active and committed team here in Geneva.
Michael, last summer it seemed like all we were talking about was the environmental impact of airplanes, carbon emissions, etc. The flight shaming sort of movement was a big deal. This year that conversation has changed dramatically, but I know the environmental targets still are out there, still something that we're working towards. How has this conversation specifically changed for you and ATAG?
Well, it's interesting because really from our perspective, it hasn't changed. Aviation's impact on climate and other sustainable issues have really been front and center of our organization's work and our members' work. So this is a continued area of focus. We have for a long time recognized that we need to take a responsible approach to future growth, and that's always continued to be a priority. I think the difference now is that we're sensing a real desire from governments and also from passengers that when the aviation industry gets itself back on its feet, we're able to genuinely push ahead with future sustainable development. And it is remaining a priority for many companies within our sector.
All right, great, Michael. And just further to that point, have there been any sort of recent announcements or developments that underscore how important sustainability still is for the sector?
Well, it's clear that this is there's a long-standing industry commitment to address climate impact. And what has been interesting is to see that even in the midst of recent events where much of the focus of government is on other issues, aviation sustainability has been closely looked at. And we saw an announcement this week from Airbus on the development of new technology to reach a zero emissions aircraft by 2035, largely based on hydrogen technologies. We also saw a commitment from the One World Alliance, which is 13 of the world's major airlines who've committed to net zero emissions by 2050. And there's a whole range of other activity going on within the sector. What ATAG tries to do is to amplify those messages, to communicate to as broad an audience as possible so that people really understand and sense that addressing sustainability is an absolute top priority for the aviation sector.
Give us some good news here. Is there any sort of silver lining out there in all the craziness we're going through right now?
Well, I think that the shutdown is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to reboot, take a step back, and consider how we want our industry to restart and to continue to grow. And that has to be along sustainable lines. And so this is giving us an opportunity to make that reflection, to have those conversations and see how as an industry we can do that. What's clear is that it's going to be have to be done in collaboration with partners in government. The whole industry behind this, but also working very closely with governments, pushing government to support the industry as it gets back on its feet, but it does so in a sustainable way.
So next week, the Air Transport Action Group has its Global Sustainable Aviation Forum, and the theme is Green Recovery. What are some of the agenda highlights and how can our viewers get involved?
Well, the real personal highlight for me is that we're launching a detailed piece of work called Waypoint 2050, which is essentially the pathway to how our industry is going to meet its long-term emissions reduction goal. there are many interesting conclusions coming out of that report, and I hope you'll all have the opportunity to read it once it's published. But one of the key findings and one of the key conclusions is this necessity for government to support industry as it moves on its pathway towards long-term sustainability. And we've got a number of calls to government of how that support can be provided, whether it's research and development, investment into sustainable aviation fuel projects, moving ahead with the rationalization of air traffic management in different parts of the world. This really is a global issue. We've got specific asks to government coming from that analysis that we think will be very important for the industry as it begins this process of green recovery.
All right, incredible. Thank you so much for sharing, Michael. And I hope that some of the people out there watching do get involved and do look for that report that you'll be putting out next week.
Well, we'd be delighted to have as many participants from all across the globe to join the ATAG forum. Very easy. Just go to the ATAG website, atag.org, and you'll find the details of the event and the registration details on there. I can guarantee you the discussions will be interesting. I'm sure you will learn something, and hopefully as a community we can end that summit with a genuine sense of momentum towards a green recovery and a future sustainable growth of aviation.
And speaking of sustainability, there's some big news this week from Airbus. The major aircraft manufacturer is talking about zero emissions aircraft, and they've introduced 3 concept vehicles, hydrogen fueled. And so this is sort of a pivot away from electric aircraft to hydrogen powered. And they are targeting an entry of 2035. So not that far away, all things considered, in what it takes to develop a new airline program. These 3 all have slightly different technologies and slightly different concepts involved, and especially in the aerodynamic stage.
That's right. The first of the 3 aircraft that they released the concepts for this week is a turbofan design. It's meant to carry 120 to 200 passengers with a range of about 2,000 nautical miles. So this is similar to the A320 family of aircraft. It's a single aisle aircraft, but it is designed to potentially operate transcontinentally.
Yeah, and you know, it's funky to see it. The wingtips look different. The tail path gets much longer because they're storing the hydrogen back there instead of in the wings. It's fun. Another concept they've got is a turboprop. It looks an awful lot like an ATR, which isn't that surprising given their partnerships there. But again, powered by a hydrogen combustion engine on the wings there. So that one's a little smaller and a little shorter range, targeting about a 1,000 nautical mile distances, but again, very sort of incremental change on top of existing platforms.
Yeah, and then the last one is probably the most funky and futuristic looking of the 3. It is a blended wing body design, which basically means the wings sort of come out and back, and then the body is blended into that. And that creates a lot of opportunities for storing that hydrogen in that extra space. And it also creates a lot of opportunities for getting funky with the layout of the interior. So I think we'll see a lot of cool concept designs for passenger experience coming out of that one. This one can hold up to 200 passengers, and they say it's going to have a range similar to the turbofan A320 sort of design.
Yeah, woe be the man who wants a window seat on the blended wing. But other than that, it certainly does look funky cool. And so excited to see that coming. Obviously, long horizon to get to any of these, getting anywhere close to getting into the sky. And there's a lot of challenges. It's not just the aerodynamics and the engines, distribution of hydrogen, generation of hydrogen. To produce that much hydrogen right now is a very fossil fuel intensive process, and the company has to come up with a way to do that with renewable energy. So those are just some of the challenges that Airbus and the whole industry faces. But a lot of money going into hydrogen-powered technologies right now, and definitely looks like this is going to be part of the future of aviation.
Excellent. Can't wait for more on that. And then just as a final thought this week, we saw a really cool story this morning posted by executivetraveler.com. And this is all about the Qantas Boeing 747. As we know, the airline has decided to retire that fleet, which is very sad. But the engineers salvaged thousands of the half-size and full-size meal service trolleys. They fully stocked them with wine, pajamas, amenity kits, 1 packet of peanuts, which I thought was funny, 80 small bottles of wine and 1 packet of peanuts. And they were selling those, which I think is a great thing for airlines these days, because we all know they're looking for money.
Yeah, I think that ratio sounds about right for my typical flight patterns. I don't know about you.
So Seth, you told me these sold out in a heartbeat, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. There's a lot of stuff that Qantas keeps trying to run little promotions down in Australia, and they keep selling out quickly. So obviously, people still love aviation. People are still sort of obsessed with and want to get back in the sky. And one of these days, it's going to happen. I promise.
You know, I think the price point of this was amazing too. $974 for the half-size cart. You know, we've seen, I think, some companies who claim to be salvaging aircraft parts and selling them as furniture, charging 3, 4, 5 times as much. And that's without all the goodies inside. So I think that was a really great incentive. And I only wish I was in Australia to avail myself of the offer.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for the weekly wrap today. I'd like to say thank you, as always, to my co-host, Seth Miller.
Wear a mask, everybody.
All right, and thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed this show, please do hit like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Check out apex.aero and paxx.aero for even more aviation news, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.